What's up? Patrick LaRouge here from Evolve Restorative Therapy. You can find me at livepainfreeprocess.com. I'm pretty gifted at getting people out of pain, and it's all because I understand the concept that the body has a protective cycle and a healing cycle. I just need to get you to flip from that protective aspect to the healing aspect. And I do that in very innovative ways and very creative ways of teaching you how to look inward so you can actually shift that aspect of yourself into a more healing state. Today, what I want to talk to you about is a concept of why our extremities are more vulnerable to injury. The reason why goes back to a long time post I made in the past, where it's called stability versus mobility. This is a humongous principle inside the whole body. Your body is always craving stability. So it's always going to try to make everything very stable. Very, very similar to the Jenga game that we used to play back in the day. And if you still play, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That game, Jenga, as long as there's something sturdy up top, the top half starts to wave. So you have to make everything as sturdy as possible as you pull out blocks. Now, the body is going to do the same thing, but it's losing its stability places. It's going to make the next thing in line stable. So what does that mean? Your feet, I'm always talking about foundations. Your feet, your hips, and your shoulder girdles are three major foundations in the body. If your feet are not in line, it's going to make the next thing sturdy, which is going to be your ankles, because your ankles are supposed to be a movable aspect. Then if that's not working properly, it's going to stabilize that and make your knees your new stable, which is already supposed to be a stable, so it's extra stability. So it's locking your knees. So when we talk about we're losing flexibility and we can't move a joint properly, it's all based off the concept of stability versus mobility. You have to get the thing underneath it to become a nice stable object so you can get the object above it to become more movable. So how does that translate to our extremities being more vulnerable is because your extremities have the weak link of the hinge joint, your knees and your elbows. And the more pressure that we put on those things, the more your body's going to say, oh, this is not stable, it's not supposed to do this type of movement, so it's going to squeeze itself in. Our job now is to open that up and start practicing in an outward motion, using our muscle tissues properly. So what I want you guys to realize is, if I were to pick up a weight, like a kettlebell here, and I lift it out in front of me, I'm going to use a ton of muscle fibers. If my body's not strong enough to lift it up like that, it's going to cheat, where it's going to pick it up, but it's also going to lock up my neck. Now you see how this whole aspect of my body, which is the upper right hand shoulder, everything throughout the whole area is locking up. It's because it's trying to become a stable object to pick up this weight. But instead, another thing that you can do to fight this is actually bring all the weight as close as possible and lift with your whole entire body, which now this 15-pound weight became really easy because I had everything working together rather than just my shoulder. That's going to be the key to you understanding why your extremities are more vulnerable, because the more things that you do way out in front of you, especially with your knees, if you're reaching out to walk and your heel striking, so on and so forth, your knees and everything's not going to be able to hold the weight load, so your body's going to stabilize the area, which is not going to allow the movement that it needs to move. So you're going to be cramming things together. So I want you to really pay attention to how you're lifting things. And even if you're bending your knees and you're protecting your back, if you don't use your body as a unit, you can bend your knees all you want, but you're going to overtax your shoulders. Your bicep is going to work extremely hard, forcing that bicep tendon, which is the tendon that's right in front of your shoulder, that runs through a thin little groove, to start to swell because of all the extra little things they're doing. Now, we're just talking about maybe lifting up your kids consistently, maybe lifting up a small little dumbbell, your cup of coffee, all these little things. You can be using your arms way too much, which is just going to add in small by small, little by little, more and more stress to the extremity that you're using, whether it be your knees, your legs, or your arms. Your extremities are more vulnerable, guys, because you are out there reaching out all the time, using more muscle fibers. More muscle fibers gain strength, and it starts to build more stronger tendons. That tendon will no longer fit inside the groove that it needs to fit into, or the tendons around the hip socket itself will start to adhere and lock the hip joint together. Then you'll lose hip range of motion. You'll lose shoulder range of motion, which then stalls out the whole. So your extremities are very vulnerable, and you have to start realizing that I have to use my extremities with the rest of my body. And that's a whole nother topic all on its own, but you have to realize that my extremities are more vulnerable. And the way you start to counter that is by bringing the world closer to you until you're able to hold things out in front of you, because you actually have the strength to do so without cheating. Anybody can hold a kettlebell out in front of them, but what will happen is they'll lift up and they'll jack up their shoulder. That is a problem. That's where majority of the world messes up. And I see a lot of shoulder cases because they don't recognize that when they lift up a cup of coffee, they're doing this to lift up the coffee. When they lift up their arms, they're doing this. They don't even need weight to mangle the weight load because their body's so used to using so much strength. Back in the day, I called this, you're killing an ant with a sledgehammer with all your might when you're just lifting up a cup of coffee. You don't have to use all of your muscle strength to lift up something little. You can do things with ease and grace. Shoulders down. Everything moving the way it's supposed to. So folks, if you have any questions on why your extremities are more vulnerable, please hit me up. This is actually a good one to end up the season, and it's almost the end of the year. I can't believe it. If you guys have any questions, please keep on coming in. I love talking with you guys. Until next time, bye.